oh God, when everything is spiraling out of control, when only 10 people have turned up to your key speech, when you decide to accidentally post pictures, look at this, of your husband having an argument with the nanny on your wedding day, then what more is there to do than yet another disastrous advertising post making zero sense, but showing that you are these days pretty damn crazy.
The amount of photos that she put just made her really look like kind of an insane narcissist. There were a lot of just her. And that one photo that you were just talking about is such a bad mistake. Well, it's interesting because you would have thought that somebody who had been there on that day, Serena, Oprah, the Clooneys, Priyanka Chopra.
Yes, she's another one.
Even Elton John, who she actually put a picture of him up. The only celebrity that she put a picture of, because of course she wants to tie herself again to Diana. None of them said, what a great day. Or, wow, what a magical wedding. Or, I still think about it. No one said anything. And it is just getting quite sad. And again, you kind of are like, oh, girl, knock it off. Like, it's getting very cringy.
When you break down what got posted, it hits hard right away. 24 photos, just one Elton John appearance, and absolutely no family in sight. That's what Meghan Markle shared for her 8th wedding anniversary, and it didn't go unnoticed at all. People didn't just scroll past this one. They actually sat down and counted every single image. Reporters like Alison Boshoff at the Daily Mail went through it carefully, and Tom Sykes from the Daily Beast did the same thing, making sure the numbers lined up. What they found was consistent.
I think it's really interesting because she's showing all of the celebrity friends, right, who usually, and she proves it, post tributes all the time to other celebrities, right? Like they Oprah or Gayle King. Look at all of the people who they love celebrating, love talking about their big moments. I know it's difficult to be shocked by how low Meghan will go, but I was still shocked by the merching of the wedding for a candle. Honestly, I was. Because, the difference with this, Paula, is that at least with the children, I guess you can say, well, it's up to them now what they do. I mean, this was a wedding paid for by us, the British taxpayer, and paid for by the British royal family. And merching the wedding, to me, I always knew that I'd go there eventually. I'm shocked that I've done it so early. It's almost like she was begging people to post about this, to talk about this. And the silence was utterly damning in my view.
24 images total, all selected by Meghan herself, dropped to her 4.5 million followers like a carefully arranged memory board. This wasn't random at all. This was her version of the royal wedding story told through her eyes. And what really stands out is the pattern inside those photos. It's almost entirely her in solo shots. Her alone in that Stella McCartney dress, her posing, her dancing, her moments framed without anyone else sharing the spotlight. It gives the impression of a celebration remembered through a very specific lens, where she remains at the center of almost every frame. What makes it even more striking is what's missing from the set. No Doria, no Charles, no wider royal family presence anywhere in sight. It's not just who is included, but who is completely absent that catches attention here. When you look at how most people usually present big life events, especially weddings, you expect a mix of faces.
I think some of them we maybe have seen before, but some of them not quite so much. And there's one picture in particular that kind of got to me, and that was when they're like close to smooching and she's like grabbing his face and he looks drunk as a skunk, like with his mouth open. It's like super awkward. I was like, why are you sharing this picture?
It was really striking, Paula, that on this anniversary, which clearly none of us thought was significant, but Harry and Meghan did, there was not one tribute from anyone else. And so they're the ones invading their own privacy. And it links, Paula, with what you have been reporting to Alison Boshoff in the Daily Mail in recent weeks about how virtually every A-lister at the wedding in some way, Paula, has turned or at least chosen to freeze themselves out.
Family, friends, emotional group moments. But here, there's only one recognizable guest from the entire 2018 ceremony, just one single familiar name appearing across the whole collection. Even more interesting, that one guest is Elton John, and according to Boshoff, even he isn't really connected to Meghan in the way people might assume. The suggestion is that his connection runs more directly through Harry rather than Meghan herself, adding another layer to how isolated the selection feels. So when you put it all together, the entire celebrity guest list of this anniversary post shrinks down to almost nothing. One famous face, a handful of Harry appearances, and a heavy focus on Meghan alone throughout the day's memory. That raises questions about how the wedding itself is being framed years later, because every photo selection tells a story, and this one feels tightly controlled. Like every image had to pass through a very specific filter before being shown to the world. Now, when we zoom into the actual post itself,
things haven't been good for some time between Doria and Meghan Markle, have they? It's been very obvious in Doria's couple of brief appearances on Meghan's media projects that she's just not interested. She doesn't like being dragged into the spotlight and used in the same way.
I looked at the pictures of Harry, right? Of her dancing with Harry, her suction kissing him. And I tell you what, he just looked like a little rag doll in her arms. You know, she clearly was director of operations on that day. And you could almost see from those pictures this poor, innocent ginger guy, a lamb to the slaughter, being sucked into Meghan's master plan.
Things start to unfold even more clearly. The 24 images were released early Tuesday morning, many of them never seen before, giving it a surprise drop feel that immediately pulled attention online. The first image opens with a corkboard-style collage, almost like a mood board of memories pinned together. Then, the sequence shifts into individual photos that break the day into isolated moments instead of one continuous story. The very first solo image shows Meghan standing alone in a hallway, wearing her Givenchy ceremony gown, looking down, almost paused in reflection. It's quiet, still, and framed entirely around her presence in that moment. Right after that comes another solo moment, this time in the backless Stella McCartney reception dress. She's captured with her arms raised, dancing alone, energy frozen in a single expressive pose that again puts her completely at the center of the frame. Then the sequence continues, one kiss, another kiss, and then more solo shots stacked together. At least 6 of these images focus only on her from different corners of the day, different lighting, different poses, different stages of getting ready, but always just her.
The best man, William, has become the invisible man. He's not in any of Meghan's pictures, nor is Catherine, the Princess of Wales, nor is the late Queen Elizabeth or the late Prince Philip, Anne, Edward, you name it, they're not there, nor are any of the galaxy of stars who went there as well, who attended that wedding. So she's censored everybody out of these great raft of pictures, and it's just her, mainly her, and a little bit of Harry.
Catherine and William give us updated pictures of their families. We don't really get a callback picture. Now, I wouldn't mind, let's say one day seeing like a little short video behind the scenes of their wedding, but I think what strikes me is that William and Catherine are always looking to the present and the future, whereas Meghan Markle posting all these old wedding pictures, it seems like all she can do is look to the past. And why she's doing that, I think, is because these last 8 years have sucked in a lot of ways.
There's no wider scene building, no group energy, no surrounding context in those shots. It's just Meghan repeatedly placed into the spotlight, with no other faces competing for attention in those frames at all. Harry does appear, but only in a limited portion of the full set, roughly about a quarter of the images. And even then, he isn't the dominant focus of the overall selection. Then, there's one more recognizable figure appearing across the entire carousel: Elton John. His presence is limited to a single image tucked into a corner of a reception moment, not a central feature of the story being told. And what makes that even more notable is the claim from Boshoff that Elton's connection aligns more strongly with Harry than Meghan. The quote being repeated is, "It's a Harry relationship, not a Harry and Meghan relationship." That line reshapes how people interpret his appearance in the collection. So when you strip it all back, the guest list visually becomes extremely narrow. Harry, Elton John, and Meghan herself taking up most of the visual space. It creates a very controlled version of the wedding day, where emotional framing matters just as much as who is physically present. And that leads directly into the bigger question, being raised. Because every wedding album is built on choices, and every choice removes just as much as it includes. The missing people become just as important as the ones shown, because they reveal what story is being shaped and what story is being left behind. It becomes less about a celebration frozen in time and more about a curated version of memory presented to millions. Each frame feels intentional, like it was selected to say something without directly saying it. Who is visible, who is absent, and who gets repeated across multiple images all become part of a much larger narrative being read into the post. And in that sense, the real discussion isn't just about the photos themselves. It's about what those selections signal when everything is laid out together like this. When you take a closer look at that photo carousel, it instantly becomes clear this wasn't some random upload. It was built with intention, every single frame placed with care and decision-making behind it. Meghan didn't just forget people or miss moments. She actively went through everything and picked what stayed and what got left out. 24 images carefully curated by her, posted straight out to 4.5 million followers like a controlled memory drop for the public to analyze. And the real story starts forming when you stop focusing on what's there and start noticing what's missing. Because once you line it all up, it doesn't look like a full wedding memory. It looks like a very specific version of it, shaped through one perspective, one filter, one narrative being pushed forward without saying a word. Without saying a single word out loud, the message still lands loud and clear. Doria Ragland, Meghan's mother, walked her down the aisle on May 19, 2018, dressed in that soft duck egg blue Oscar de la Renta outfit that instantly stood out in every memory of the ceremony. She sat alone in the front pew, the only Markle present, flown in all the way from Los Angeles just to witness her daughter's biggest day. Photographers captured so many emotional moments of her throughout that day, crying during the ceremony, smiling and laughing at the reception, standing on chapel steps, holding her daughter's hand like a grounding force in the middle of everything happening around them. Her presence was visible, emotional, and deeply human in every frame she appeared in. But here's where things take a sharp turn. She's not in a single one of the 24 photos posted in this carousel. Not in the opening collage, not in the getting ready shots, not in any emotional close-up, not even in a background moment where she could be seen casually included. Now, to be fair, Boshoff pointed something out carefully here, and it matters to understand it properly. The photos of Doria absolutely exist. They are real and documented. The official royal wedding photographer, Alexei Lubomirsky, captured formal portraits of Meghan with her mother, and those images were publicly released back in 2018 for the world to see. So this isn't about availability or access. Meghan has every single one of those images at her disposal, every candid smile, every posed portrait, every emotional moment from that entire wedding day exists in the archive she could have drawn from. And still, she chose none of them for this anniversary post. That's the part people keep circling back to, because it's not about limitation, it's about selection. And selection always tells a story in itself. Some will argue this is a privacy decision, but that explanation raises more questions than it answers, because privacy usually applies to protecting others from exposure, not selectively shaping a public-facing memory shared with millions of followers. This wasn't a private scrapbook kept in a drawer. This was a public carousel uploaded to 4.5 million people, watching closely. Every single image was a conscious decision, every omission just as intentional as every inclusion. A mother who was photographed openly weeping with joy at her daughter's wedding would normally be expected to appear somewhere in that daughter's wedding memory collection years later. Not necessarily in every frame, but at least somewhere, in some form, even subtly included. And the fact she isn't included anywhere makes the absence feel heavier than any single image could explain. The audience doesn't need it spelled out. It already reads the meaning between the lines, and that's exactly why it hits so strongly. This is the same woman whose Netflix storytelling repeatedly emphasized how close she is to her mother. The same narrative space where their bond was described as deeply personal, supportive, and central to her life. In her Vanity Fair cover story, Meghan even referred to Doria as her best friend, reinforcing that emotional closeness in her public identity. And yet, on the 8th anniversary of the very day Doria walked her down that aisle, she didn't appear in the curated memory of it. That contradiction is what makes people pause, because it doesn't line up neatly with the emotional framing that has been shared publicly over the years. Now, shifting focus to another major absence, King Charles, who at the time was the Prince of Wales, walked Meghan down the second half of that aisle after her father stepped back just days before the ceremony. It was a highly symbolic moment, a senior royal stepping in personally to support a new member of the family during one of the most important days of her life. Charles, in his late 60s at the time, and next in line to the throne, took on that role in what many royal observers described as a rare gesture of warmth and inclusion. It was widely seen as a moment where the institution extended a formal hand of acceptance. Yet, in this entire 24-photo carousel, he is nowhere to be seen. Not in a candid shot, not in a ceremonial frame, not even in the background of a wider wedding moment. Queen Elizabeth herself also played a central role in the day. She approved the venue, supported the ceremony arrangements, and attended the wedding in full presence, even presenting Harry with the Sussex dukedom that same morning. A historic moment, layered with royal tradition and significance. William and Catherine were there as well, arriving together, part of the central royal presence at the ceremony. Their children, George and Charlotte, were part of the wedding party as page and bridesmaid, visible symbols of family unity at the time. But none of that made it into this selection either. No Queen, no Prince of Wales, no formal royal presence, no extended family moments included in the curated set. Tom Sykes, who has covered the royals for over 15 years at the Daily Beast, put it bluntly when reflecting on moves like this. He described the Sussexes as having squandered every last drop of goodwill through exactly this kind of move, calling it performative solemnity undercut by reflexive vanity. That kind of framing adds even more weight to how this carousel is being interpreted, because at this point, this isn't just a wedding album being shared casually online. It starts to look like a carefully constructed brand moment, a controlled version of history presented to millions, shaped by what is included and what is deliberately erased. And that's where the interpretation gets sharper. This isn't just memory, it's messaging, and messaging always has intention behind it. So when you strip everything back, the conclusion forming in many minds is that this isn't about what the wedding looked like. It's about how it is being remembered now, 8 years later, in a way that reshapes the original picture entirely. When you zoom out and really take in the full scope of what's happening here, this stops looking like a simple anniversary post and starts feeling like a tightly controlled selection of memories, shaped with deliberate intention behind every single image uploaded online. The Beckhams, David and Victoria, were once present at the wedding, but Boshoff's reporting now suggests they've completely distanced themselves from the Sussex circle and are instead being seen more aligned with William and Catherine. Serena Williams, once described as Meghan's closest and most genuine friend, is also now reported to have cooled in connection based on recent coverage. So when you step back, the pattern becomes blunt and hard to ignore. Royals gone, celebrity ties weakened, and even the strongest friendships fading over time. That leaves a very small visual circle inside the carousel Meghan posted for her 8th anniversary. Only one outside face appears, Elton John, a man more closely tied to her husband than to her directly, standing as the lone recognizable guest among mostly Meghan-centered imagery. That's where Boshoff's argument sharpens. This isn't about who failed to post tributes, it's about who she personally chose to include and who was left out of her own curated story. The Clooneys, for example, were at King Charles's event last week, still active in those circles and still visibly part of that world. So the issue isn't absence of attention, it's selection. And that selection creates a social ledger that feels narrower over time, almost like a brand story slowly running low on shared connections and leaning heavily on controlled memory instead. It starts to feel like a fuel gauge dropping steadily over 8 years, and the reading it shows now is very different from what it once was. Even more striking, the only visible anniversary acknowledgement reportedly came from airline crew who were apparently informed about the occasion beforehand. That detail adds an unusual layer to how the celebration is being interpreted publicly, almost like even small gestures around it feel coordinated rather than spontaneous. But the deeper contrast comes from something said months earlier. In October 2025, Harry appeared on Hassan Minhaj's podcast, where the conversation turned toward children, phones, and social media exposure. When asked about kids and smartphones, Harry responded cautiously, clearly uneasy about early access to digital platforms. He went further, describing social media environments in extremely harsh terms, calling the people behind them evil and wicked, and suggesting they manipulate attention and behavior at massive scale. He even said they farm our children's mindset and sell it back to them, showing strong distrust of how these systems operate. That interview faded quickly at the time, but resurfaced again because of what happened this week. While Harry spoke about caution and digital danger, Meghan was actively publishing a 24-photo wedding anniversary carousel to 4.5 million followers. The post also included deeply personal family moments, including their children singing Happy Anniversary and the bronze penguin Harry gave her, bronze symbolizing the traditional 8th anniversary material tied to lasting partnership and endurance. But that symbolism sits inside a carefully curated visual story. One Elton John, no extended family presence, and a strong focus on selected wedding memories arranged for public consumption and emotional framing. The two perspectives clash directly. Harry's caution about social media versus Meghan's professional use of it as a storytelling and branding platform. Those versions don't fully align, and that tension is exactly what people keep pointing at again and again. And another major public moment is already coming into focus. On June 6th, Peter Phillips, Princess Anne's son, is getting married at All Saints Church in Kempsford, with King Charles, Queen Camilla, William and Catherine all invited. Princess Beatrice and Eugenie are also expected to attend, gradually reappearing in public royal engagements through events like this, easing back into visibility step by step. Meanwhile, reports suggest the Sussexes are not on the guest list, and that absence is being widely discussed as another sign of distance between both sides of the family structure. So when you put everything together, the picture becomes very specific and very hard to ignore. 24 photos, no extended family presence, one Elton John, a husband warning about social media dangers, and a wife using those same platforms to mark the anniversary of the day she entered a family that now appears publicly more distant than ever. And what makes this even more layered is how the story is being shaped, not just by who appears in the frame, but by who is repeatedly absent from it. Absence becomes its own kind of presence, especially when the expectation of inclusion exists and is repeatedly unmet in visible ways. That contrast creates a narrative tension that runs underneath the entire carousel. On the surface, it looks like celebration, nostalgia, and curated memory, but underneath, it reads like selection, omission, and controlled storytelling. Every image becomes part of a larger argument being made without words. Every smile, every frame, every carefully chosen moment builds toward a version of reality that is tightly edited for public viewing. And when that version is measured against everything happening outside of it, the royal guest lists, the shifting friendships, the public appearances elsewhere, the gap becomes harder for audiences to ignore, because at that point, it is no longer just about a wedding anniversary post. It becomes about positioning, perception, and the story a public figure chooses to tell when they have complete control over what the world sees and what it never gets to see. And that is exactly why people are dissecting it so heavily. Not because of one photo or two, but because of the full pattern that emerges only when you step back and look at the entire collection as one unified statement. The carousel told a story. It just wasn't the one she meant to tell. Comment and subscribe.